In the formal atmosphere of Providence Municipal Court, Judge Frank Caprio has presided over countless cases where eloquent lawyers make sophisticated arguments, where defendants deliver carefully prepared statements, and where complex legal reasoning determines outcomes. But on this gentle autumn morning in October, the most profound words spoken in his courtroom would come from the smallest person present, a little boy whose innocent perspective would cut through decades of legal complexity to reveal simple truths about love, family, and what truly matters in life. The case called to the bench was listed as a parking violation for Mr. Anthony Russo, a man in his early 60s who approached the defendant's stand with visible difficulty, using a walker for support and moving with the careful deliberation of someone managing significant physical limitations. Anthony's weathered face showed the marks of both age and illness, and his clothes hung loosely on a frame that had clearly lost considerable weight recently. But despite his obvious physical struggles, there was a gentle kindness in his expression and a quiet dignity in how he carried himself. Walking beside Anthony, holding carefully to one side of the walker to steady it, was a small boy who appeared to be no more than 5 or 6 years old. The child had dark curly hair, bright brown eyes that looked around the courtroom with equal parts wonder and worry, and he wore a little suit jacket that was slightly too large, as if borrowed from an older sibling or purchased with room to grow. Most remarkably, the boy stayed protectively close to the elderly man, his small hand never leaving the walker's frame, as if his presence alone could provide strength and support. The boy's name was Lucas Russo, and as Judge Caprio would soon discover, he was Anthony's grandson and the reason why this particular parking citation had become far more significant than a simple traffic violation. Lucas had insisted on coming to court with his grandfather, though no one, not even Anthony, fully understood why the child felt so strongly about being present for these proceedings. The citation detailed that Anthony had parked in a handicapped space outside a medical building without displaying a valid disability placard. According to the documentation, Anthony did have a placard but had forgotten to hang it from his rearview mirror on the day in question, a technical violation that carried a fine of $250. The parking enforcement officer had noted in the citation that the defendant appeared elderly and unwell, and had expressed regret about having to issue the ticket. As Anthony and Lucas approached the defendant's stand together, Judge Caprio immediately noticed the profound bond between grandfather and grandson. Lucas adjusted his position to make sure his grandfather could lean on the walker comfortably, and Anthony's hand briefly touched the top of the boy's head in a gesture of affection and gratitude that spoke volumes about their relationship. "Good morning, Mr. Russo," Judge Caprio said warmly, his voice carrying immediate compassion as he observed Anthony's obvious physical challenges. "I see you have a young assistant with you today. Before we discuss your citation, can you tell me who this fine young man is?" Anthony looked down at his grandson with an expression of such pure love that it was almost painful to witness. "Your Honor, this is my grandson Lucas. He's 5 years old, and he insisted on coming with me today. I tried to tell him that court is for grown-ups and that he should stay home with his mother, but he said he needed to be here to help me." Judge Caprio smiled warmly at Lucas, who was looking up at the judge with wide, serious eyes that suggested he understood he was in an important place even if he couldn't fully comprehend the formal proceedings. "Well, Lucas, I'm very glad you're here to help your grandfather. That shows you're a very caring young man." Lucas nodded solemnly but didn't speak, still absorbing the gravity of the courtroom environment. Judge Caprio could see that the boy was intelligent and observant, taking in every detail of the proceedings and staying close to his grandfather with protective devotion. "Mr. Russo, I see you received a citation for parking in a handicapped space without displaying your placard," Judge Caprio continued, shifting to the legal matter at hand. "Can you help me understand what happened that day?" Anthony's expression showed embarrassment and regret as he prepared to explain his situation. "Your Honor, I have a valid disability placard. I've had one for the past year since my health started declining. On the day I received this citation, I had a chemotherapy appointment at the cancer center. I've been fighting pancreatic cancer for 14 months now." Judge Caprio felt an immediate surge of compassion as Anthony revealed his cancer diagnosis. The judge could see that Anthony's physical frailty wasn't just age but the devastating effects of both the disease and its treatment. The context immediately transformed the parking violation from a simple oversight into something far more understandable given the circumstances Anthony was managing. I was feeling particularly ill that morning. The effects of my previous treatment session were still hitting me hard, Anthony continued, his words revealing the physical and mental toll that cancer treatment extracts. When I arrived at the medical center, I was focused entirely on getting inside before I became too nauseous or weak. I parked in the handicapped space because I knew I couldn't walk far, but in my distracted state, I completely forgot to hang my placard from the mirror. The explanation revealed exactly the kind of innocent mistake that serious illness could create, not willful violation of parking regulations but rather a moment of understandable distraction when someone was dealing with overwhelming physical distress. Judge Caprio could imagine Anthony's single-minded focus on getting to his treatment appointment while managing nausea, weakness, and the psychological burden of fighting terminal cancer. I didn't realize I had forgotten the placard until I came back to my car 3 hours later after my treatment, Anthony explained, describing his discovery of the citation. By then, the parking enforcement officer had already left the ticket on my windshield. I felt terrible about it. I know the handicapped parking rules exist for important reasons, and I hate that I violated them even accidentally. The genuine remorse that Anthony expressed revealed his character and his respect for the rules, even while acknowledging that his violation had been unintentional. Judge Caprio could see that this was not someone who habitually disregarded parking regulations, but rather someone who had made an understandable mistake while dealing with extraordinary circumstances. Mr. Russo, I can certainly understand how you might have been distracted under those circumstances, Judge Caprio said with compassion. Before I make any decisions about this citation, is there anything else you'd like the court to know about your situation? Before Anthony could respond, Lucas suddenly tugged gently on his grandfather's sleeve and looked up at him with an earnest expression. The boy whispered something that Judge Caprio couldn't hear, and Anthony's eyes immediately filled with tears as he looked down at his grandson with a mixture of love, sadness, and what appeared to be resignation about something the child wanted to share. "Your Honor," Anthony said, his voice thick with emotion, "Lucas wants to say something to you. I don't know exactly what he wants to say, but he's been telling me all morning that he needs to talk to the judge. Would it be appropriate for him to speak?" Judge Caprio felt his curiosity intensify as he realized that Lucas's insistence on coming to court had been motivated by something specific he wanted to communicate. "Of course, Lucas," the judge said gently, giving the child his complete attention. "What would you like to tell me?" Lucas took a deep breath, gathering his courage to speak in this intimidating adult environment. When his voice came, it was small and clear, carrying the perfect honesty that only young children possess before they learn to filter their thoughts or soften their truths. What Lucas was about to say would transform this routine parking violation case into one of the most touching moments Judge Caprio would ever experience in his courtroom. Lucas looked up at Judge Caprio with those serious brown eyes, took a deep breath, and began to speak with the perfect clarity that only young children possess when they haven't yet learned to complicate simple truths with adult concerns about propriety or impression management. "Mr. Judge," Lucas began, using the same respectful but informal address that children often use for authority figures, "my nano forgot to put his special sign in the car window because he was feeling very sick that day. He gets sick a lot now because of his cancer medicine. Sometimes the medicine makes him forget things or feel dizzy or throw up." Judge Caprio felt his throat tighten immediately at Lucas's matter-of-fact description of his grandfather's illness and treatment side effects. The child was describing devastating medical realities with the innocent acceptance that children bring to circumstances they can't change, focusing on explaining rather than seeking sympathy. "Nano takes me to school every morning even when he doesn't feel good," Lucas continued, his words revealing the daily reality of their lives together. "Sometimes he has to stop the car because he feels sick, but he always makes sure I get to school on time. He makes my lunch every day with sandwiches cut into triangles because that's how I like them. And he picks me up after school and helps me with my homework even when he's really tired." The picture that Lucas painted with his simple words was profoundly moving, an elderly man battling terminal cancer while maintaining the daily routines of raising a young child, never complaining or seeking recognition for the extraordinary effort required to provide stability and care despite his own suffering. "My mommy died last year," Lucas said, his voice taking on the flat tone that children use when stating facts they've had to accept but don't fully understand. "She was Nano's daughter. After mommy went to heaven, Nano said I could live with him so I wouldn't be alone. He said we would take care of each other. Judge Caprio felt tears forming in his eyes as he realized the full scope of what Anthony had taken on, not just fighting his own terminal illness, but also grieving his daughter while simultaneously providing a stable home for his orphaned grandson. The courage and love required for such a commitment was almost incomprehensible. Nano is very sick with cancer, Lucas continued, his words revealing his 5-year-old understanding of his grandfather's condition. The doctors give him medicine that's supposed to help, but it makes him feel bad. Sometimes he has to lie down in the middle of the day. Sometimes he can't eat dinner because his tummy hurts. But he always reads me stories before bed, even when his voice gets tired. The daily sacrifices that Lucas described, Anthony pushing through pain and exhaustion to maintain nurturing routines for his grandson, revealed a depth of parental love that transcended biological relationships and physical limitations. Judge Caprio understood that Anthony was using his final months or years to ensure that Lucas felt loved and secure despite the trauma of losing his mother. Last week, I heard Nano crying in his room at night, Lucas said, his voice taking on a worried tone that no 5-year-old should have to carry. I went to see if he was okay, and he was looking at a paper with numbers on it. He didn't know I was there, but I heard him say, "I don't know how I'm going to pay all these bills and take care of Lucas too." The revelation that Lucas had witnessed his grandfather's private moment of financial despair added another devastating layer to their situation. Judge Caprio could imagine Anthony's terror at the mounting medical bills, the cost of raising a child, and the inadequacy of his fixed income to meet both their needs, all while trying to shield his young grandson from the stress of their financial crisis. I didn't understand all the words, but I knew Nano was worried about money, Lucas continued, his innocent analysis of what he had overheard revealing his perceptiveness and his concern for his grandfather. That's when I decided I needed to help him. But I'm only 5, so I can't get a job. All I have is my piggy bank. Judge Caprio's heart broke as Lucas explained his child's logic about wanting to help his grandfather financially. The impulse to contribute, the recognition of his own limitations due to age, and the identification of his only available resource revealed a level of emotional awareness and empathy that was remarkable in someone so young. I've been saving money in my piggy bank for a long time, Lucas explained, his words revealing the purpose behind what he was about to offer. I get $5 for my birthday from my uncle, and sometimes Nano gives me $1 when I'm really good. I've been saving because Nano told me it's important to save money for things you need. The financial education that Anthony had been providing to Lucas, teaching him about saving despite their own desperate circumstances, demonstrated the grandfather's commitment to preparing his grandson for the future even while managing an overwhelming present. When I saw the paper on Nano's car that said he had to pay money, I knew that was one of the bills he was worried about, Lucas said, finally connecting his concerns to the parking citation. Nano tried to explain that it was because he forgot to put his special sign in the window, but I could tell he was upset about having to pay more money when we already don't have enough. Lucas reached into his pocket and pulled out a small plastic piggy bank shaped like a blue whale, holding it up for Judge Caprio to see. "Mr. Judge, this is all my money. I counted it this morning with Nano's help. I have $43 in my piggy bank. I want to give it to you to help pay for Nano's ticket so he doesn't have to worry about it anymore." Judge Caprio looked at the small plastic whale piggy bank that Lucas held up with such earnestness, and he felt tears streaming freely down his face. The courtroom had fallen into absolute silence, everyone present understanding they were witnessing something profoundly pure, a 5-year-old child offering his entire life savings to protect his beloved grandfather from financial worry. "Lucas," Judge Caprio said gently, "that's incredibly kind and generous of you. But can you tell me why you think it's important to give your Nano this money?" "Because Nano needs his money for his cancer medicine," Lucas explained with the simple logic of childhood. "The medicine costs a lot of money, and without it, Nano hurts really bad. I heard him tell the doctor that sometimes he has to choose between buying his medicine and buying food for both of us. If I give you my piggy bank money, then Nano can use his money for medicine instead of for the parking ticket." The devastating choice that Lucas had overheard his grandfather discussing, medication versus food, revealed the brutal financial calculations that terminal illness imposed on families without adequate resources. Anthony's face showed shame and grief that his grandson had been exposed to such adult worries. And also, Lucas continued, his voice taking on an even more urgent tone, I'm scared that if Nano has to pay too much money, he won't be able to buy his medicine, and if he doesn't have his medicine, he might die sooner. The doctor said Nano is very sick, and I don't want him to die because of a parking ticket. The connection Lucas had made between the parking fine and his grandfather's potential death revealed the terrifying logic that children develop when they're exposed to adult crises without fully understanding them. Judge Caprio could see that Lucas had been carrying the weight of believing that this citation could literally cost his grandfather his life. Mr. Judge, I have a very important question, Lucas said, his voice trembling slightly as he prepared to ask something that had clearly been weighing heavily on his young mind. Is my Nano going to go to jail? Because if he goes to jail, who will take care of me? I don't have anyone else. My mommy is in heaven, and I don't know where my daddy is, and my uncle lives far away. The naked fear in Lucas's question, the terror of losing the only family he had left, completely shattered Judge Caprio's composure. Here was a 5-year-old child who had already lost his mother, now facing the possibility of losing his grandfather either to illness or to legal consequences he didn't understand. I promise I'll be really, really good if you let Nano stay with me, Lucas continued, his words revealing the desperate bargaining of a child trying to influence outcomes beyond his control. I'll clean my room every day, and I'll eat all my vegetables, and I'll never complain when Nano is too tired to play. Please don't take my Nano away. He's all I have. Anthony was now crying openly, his hand on Lucas's shoulder as he struggled with the pain of hearing his grandson's fears articulated so plainly. Judge Caprio could see that Anthony had been trying to shield Lucas from understanding the gravity of their situation, but the child's perceptiveness had pierced through those protective efforts. And Mr. Judge, Lucas added, pulling out a crumpled piece of paper from his other pocket, I drew you a picture of me and Nano. See, that's us at the park. Nano takes me there even when he's tired because he says it's important for me to play and be a kid. If you keep this picture, maybe you'll remember that Nano is a good person who just forgot about his sign because he was sick. The child's drawing showed 2 stick figures, one tall with a walker, one small holding the tall one's hand, under a bright yellow sun and surrounded by flowers. At the bottom, in wobbly child handwriting, Lucas had written, Nano plus Lucas equals best friends. Judge Caprio stood up, unable to remain behind his desk in the face of such pure love and innocent sacrifice. Walking around to stand directly in front of Lucas and Anthony, he knelt down to the child's eye level, his face wet with tears. Lucas, Judge Caprio said, his voice barely controlled, I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Your Nano is not going to jail. Not today, not ever, not for forgetting to hang his parking sign. Do you understand? Lucas's face flooded with relief, his small body sagging as the weight of his worst fear was lifted. Really? You promise? I promise, Judge Caprio said with absolute conviction. And I'm going to do something else. I'm dismissing this ticket completely, which means your Nano doesn't have to pay any money at all. Not $250, and not $43 from your piggy bank. The judge gently pushed the plastic whale back toward Lucas. This money is yours, Lucas. You saved it, and it's very important that you keep it. But what you offered to do today, giving everything you have to help someone you love, that's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Judge Caprio stood and addressed Anthony directly. Mr. Russo, you're raising an extraordinary young man. The love and empathy Lucas has demonstrated today are direct reflections of the values you've instilled in him despite facing unimaginable challenges. But Judge Caprio wasn't finished. Reaching into his wallet, he pulled out $300. Mr. Russo, this is from me personally. I want you to use it for whatever you and Lucas need, medicine, food, anything. And I'm going to connect you with social services, hospice support, and every resource available to help families in your situation. The courtroom erupted in applause, and several observers approached offering additional help, meal deliveries, grocery gift cards, offers to drive Anthony to medical appointments. Lucas's simple words had opened a floodgate of community compassion. Lucas looked up at Judge Caprio with wonder. "Mr. Judge, does this mean Nano can buy his medicine and we can still have food?" "Yes, Lucas," Judge Caprio said, kneeling again to look the boy in the eyes. "And I want you to know something important. What you did today, trying to help your Nano even though you're small, shows that love isn't about how much money you have or how big you are. It's about caring for each other. You took care of your Nano today by showing everyone how much you love him." As Lucas and Anthony prepared to leave, Lucas turned back one final time. "Thank you, Mr. Judge. I'm going to keep saving my piggy bank money, and when I grow up, I want to be like you, someone who helps people and makes them feel better when they're scared." The video of Lucas's court appearance would be viewed over 50 million times, touching hearts around the world. Donations poured in for Anthony's medical care and Lucas's future. But perhaps most importantly, Lucas's simple words, offered without guile or calculation, pure expressions of a child's love, reminded millions of people what truly matters. Not wealth or status or even perfect health, but the love we show to the people who need us most. Anthony would live another 14 months, and he would spend every day of that time ensuring Lucas felt loved and secure. When he passed, the community that Lucas's innocence had mobilized ensured the boy was cared for by his uncle, with his education funded and his future secure. Lucas kept that blue whale piggy bank forever, a reminder of the day his small voice and simple words changed not just his own life, but touched the hearts of millions around the world.